Yes, Anna, thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening once again, and welcome to the technical session, the first of the technical session on land management and administration. So after, I don't know if you had a chance to follow the high-level sessions today, there's many interesting contributions in terms of what are some of the challenges, some of the programs there are taking place these days in the Arab countries. And so the sessions, I'm really excited to hear some of the specific experiences and specific issues that we see in some of the countries in the region. So we have 5 presentations for today. 5 very interesting presentations with different cases and also potential solutions to some of the challenges. So without further ado, let me start with the first and introduce the first presenter, Mr. Wada Katmawi. He is the General Director of Cadastral Affairs of Sears. Previously, he was the Deputy Minister of Local Administration and Environment for Environmental Affairs. And in this capacity, he represented Syria in several regional international environment climate change events. Mr. Katmawi has occupied several positions in Aleppo City. Among them, he was the Director of Land Development, the Director of the Technical Affairs, and since 2014, he was the head of the Bureau of Reconstruction and Local Development. He is a licensed real estate appraiser, and he graduated from the Aleppo University as a civil engineer. So, Mr. Wada Katmawi, the floor is yours.
أسعد الله مساءكم. السيد رئيس الجلسة، السادة الحضور، بداية لابد أن نشكر رئاسة المؤتمر والدولة المضيفة جمهورية مصر العربية وبرنامج الأمم المتحدة للمستوطنات البشرية لجهودهم في عقد هذا المؤتمر. ونقدم لكم فيما يلي عرضا موجزا عن إدارة الأراضي في الجمهورية العربية السورية، حيث تتم إدارة الأراضي وفق مفهومين. المفهوم الأول إدارة الأراضي حسب طبيعتها، بحسب طبيعة الأرض وموقعها من جهة، وإلى الخطط والغايات التي تسعى الحكومة إلى تنفيذها عليها من جهة أخرى. الأراضي الزراعية، إن الأراضي التي تقع خارج المخططات التنظيمية تتمتع بطبيعة تربة زراعية تشكل غالبية الأراضي السورية، وتعتبر الرافد الكبير للاقتصاد الوطني، فيجري دعمها من جهات القطاع العام بتقديم الدعم للفلاحين وتحفيزهم على حسن استثمارها. الأراضي داخل المخططات التنظيمية وهي الأراضي التي تتمتع بالنشاطات الحضرية، وتتم إدارتها من خلال إزالة الشيوع وتثبيت الملكية وإحداث المناطق التنظيمية وتطوير هذه المناطق ضمنها، ومنح المالكين مقاسم معدة للبناء عليها وفق ضوابط محددة. القيام بأعمال التطوير العقاري بمساهمة القطاع الخاص وتقديم التسهيلات اللازمة لعمل المطورين العقاريين. أما المفهوم الثاني فهو إدارة الأراضي والعقارات عبر نظام عقاري ثابت، حيث تشكل العقارات والأموال غير المنقولة الثروة الوطنية الثابتة في أي بلد، حيث تعتبر هذه العقارات سواء كانت زراعية أو سكنية أو حراجية العنصر المهم في اقتصاد الوطن. وتتجلى هذه الأهمية من خلال المصلحة العامة للدولة من جهة، من خلال عقارات أملاك الدولة والأراضي الحراجية وأراضي البادية، ومن جهة أخرى في المصلحة الخاصة والفردية من خلال السكن والاستثمار الزراعي والصناعي والتجاري والسياحي وغيره. ومنذ القدم برزت أهمية إدارة الأراضي والعقارات من خلال تسجيل العقارات وتداول الملكيات، وذلك للحفاظ على الملكية الفردية وإدارة وتسجيل أملاك الدولة وعدم التعدي عليها من خلال تحديدها وإلحاقها ضمن مفهوم الأملاك العمومية. لذا عمل المشرع السوري منذ ما يقارب 95 عاما على وضع أسس وقواعد التشريع العقاري السوري لإدارة تسجيل الأراضي والحفاظ على الملكية من خلال قانون التحديد والتحرير الصادر بالقرار رقم 186 لعام 1926، الذي بموجبه يتم تسجيل الأراضي بأسماء المالكين وأصحاب الحقوق العينية. قانون السجل العقاري الصادر بالقرار 188 لعام 26 السجل العقاري الذي يفتتح حكما أمين السجل العقاري في المنطقة العقارية، حيث يتألف السجل العقاري من دفتر الأملاك والوثائق المتممة ومحاضر التحديد والتحرير وخرائط المساحة. وقد نصت المادة 15 من الدستور الجمهورية العربية السورية على حفظ وصيانة الملكية الفردية وعدم نزعها للمصلحة العامة إلا وفق تعويض عادل. تبرز أهمية النظام العقاري في الاقتصاد والعملية التنموية من خلال استقرار المواطنين في مناطقهم وارتباطهم بها، تحفيز العمل الزراعي للفلاحين، تحفيز العمل الصناعي والتجاري، الحفاظ على الأملاك العامة والحراج وغيرها، إعادة إعمار الذي تعرضت له نتيجة للحرب الإرهابية على سوريا، وعودة المهجرين إلى ديارهم من خلال تأمين عقاراتهم وإزالة الأمطار، أعمال التطوير العقاري وتنمية المدن. وقد عملت المديرية العامة للمصالح العقارية وبإشراف وزارة الإدارة المحلية والبيئة على حفظ وصيانة وتداول الملكية العقارية منذ القدم، وتسعى بشكل مستمر لإدخال أحدث الطرق المتقدمة لتحديث أسلوب العمل لديها ولدى المديريات التابعة لها. وبموجب القوانين والأنظمة النافذة قامت المديرية العامة بحفظ الوثائق العقارية في مديرياتها ولحظ نسخة لديها من العقود في مديرية السجل المركزي في المديرية العامة، مما شكل لها مخزونا وأرشيفا عقاريا لجميع الوثائق العقارية الموثقة في المحافظات السورية. كما عملت على تطوير السجلات العقارية والوثائق ضمن ميكروفيلم وحفظها في المستودعات المركزية. وفي الفترة الحالية تقوم المديرية العامة بالأرشفة الإلكترونية من خلال تصوير الوثائق وكافة العقود والوقوعات العقارية الجارية عبر كاميرات رقمية وحفظها بشكل أصولي في مديرية المصالح وفي السجل العقاري المركزي. كما قامت المديرية العامة بإطلاق مشروع رقمنة الصحيفة العقارية وإدخالها في الخدمة العقارية. ويشكل المخزون المركزي للوثائق العقارية مركزيا أهمية لازمة في معرض تطبيق أعمال إعادة تكوين الصحيفة العقارية التي تعرضت للضرر بسبب الأعمال الإرهابية والحرب على سوريا. وعلى الرغم من القوة يتمتع بها السجل العقاري والوثوقية التي يتمتع بها، فإنه لم يستطع أن يواكب حياة العصر ومتطلباته من خلال رقمنة العقارية في السجل العقاري والتوثيق العقاري الإلكتروني الذي يطرح له الجميع لتأدية الخدمة العقارية بشكل أسرع وحفظ البيانات الرقمية والحفاظ عليها، حيث بدأت أعمال رقمنة الصحيفة العقارية في منتصف العقد الماضي. لكن نتيجة الحرب على سوريا والإجراءات القسرية أحادية الجانب عليها تسببت في صعوبة تأمين التجهيزات والبرمجيات اللازمة لذلك، ومما يعتبر أهم معوقات عملية رقمنة الصحيفة العقارية. وبالتالي ومن هذا المنبر نطالب برفع الإجراءات القسرية أحادية الجانب المفروضة على سوريا ونهوض المنظمات الدولية المعنية بمسؤولياتها في دعم القطاع العقاري، يشمل تأمين البنى التكنولوجية والتقنية وبناء القدرات لتأهيل ما تضرر من الصحائف العقارية، وتمكين المديرية العامة للمصالح العقارية من تقديم خدماتها بالشكل الأمثل، مما يساعد في عودة المهجرين وتأمين الوثائق اللازمة لإعادة تأهيل وبناء وترميم عقاراتهم والنهوض بمستوى تقديم الخدمات العقارية لكافة المواطنين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much, Mr. Katmawi, for bringing in the Syrian experience. Indeed, the challenges are great, and we hope that this is a good opportunity to see what the other countries also experiences and share. And so, thank you very much again for your intervention. We'll move to the next speaker, and then at the end, we'll try to open the floor and see if there are any questions from the audience or from the chat. Our next speaker is Dr. Rohan Bennett. He's a senior land administration advisor with Cadastre International in the Netherlands and an associate professor with the Swinburne University of Technology of Melbourne, Australia. He holds degrees in information systems, geomatic engineering, surveying, and a PhD in land administration. Previously, he held research and development position at the University of Melbourne and the University of Twente. He has primarily worked in countries across Asia, Eastern Africa, and Eastern Europe, focusing on sustainable land administration, land registry, and cadastral system development. He has led and managed the Forum for European Commission It's for Land research program, and he was part of the team that developed the UN GGIM endorsed framework for effective land administration, which is now translated into Arabic. So the floor is yours, please.
Thanks very much, Anna, and good afternoon and evening and morning to you all. Nice to be here with you in the second Arab Land Conference, and thanks also to the organisers, particularly UN Habitat, GLTN and World Bank, for enabling this second event, and of course our hosts in the Republic of Egypt for hosting the event, not only in person but also online. It's no small task to get these things up and running, and I think we're all appreciative that we're all here for the second iteration of this conference. What I'm presenting today is really a collected work. It's had a lot of contributions into it, and it's from the team at Cadastre International, which is short for the Dutch Cadastre Land Registry and National Mapping Authority, which has an international arm that works on development collaboration with countries across many regions, and not the least being the Arab region. And this collection of slides that we'll present here is really from project work that's been starting up or instigated over the last few years. And in particular, I have to thank my co-authors or co-presenters if they were here. And I know some of them are. I think Khulud is in the room with you there at the conference. So Khulud Saad, thank you very much for a lot of the groundwork that you put into this before you took up your new post at Esri North and East Africa, but also to Ava Maria Unger and Crit Lemon, and special mention to Kees de Zoo and Paula Dijkstra. And also to the partner agencies. Cadastre is a land agency, obviously, and tends to work with other land agencies, brother or sister agencies, on those collaborations. So there's a lot of input and support from those agencies. I'm hoping you're seeing my slides at this point. So just to give you the sort of main points I'd like to cover in case I do run out of time. I would like to cover some specific land tenure administration issues that we've found from our initial project work in Egypt, Lebanon, and the Palestinian territories. And from that sort of form, some of the shared challenges that we identified in this work that are shared across the region, or at least those countries that we've been involved with. And despite those variations, and obviously the great variations in the 30 or 40 odd countries that are in the region, there is some shared opportunities and therefore some shared chances to work together to create this critical mass of momentum towards improvement of land administration within the region. And then at the end, I'll probably finish with some ideas or some solutions, as you were talking, Anna, that maybe can be helpful to this process. So there's a little bit of background from the Cadastre side, or the story of how Cadastre's been involved in the region. Now, obviously, we've heard this morning from Waels Akut, giving us the sort of, I guess, the recent iteration of the story in the region around the Arab Spring and the conflicts emerging out of that with ISIL and ISIS, and the migration that was occurring in the early part of the last decade. And at the same time, in parallel, I guess we saw the voluntary guidelines being developed at the global level, and also the establishment or the agreement on the SDGs. And as part of that work, or I guess at the confluence of that coming together, we saw GLTN, World Bank, GIZ, at the Arab League, amongst other agencies, all working together to put a bit more attention into this very important geopolitical region, which resulted in the first Arab Land Conference and some early post-conflict studies by GLTN and GIZ, which were really background studies on conflict in the region and how that impacts on land tenure. Fast forward to 2019 and 2021, we now see the second conference going ahead today. And a lot of the work, I think we've seen already some examples today from the World Bank that's been, and others, that it has showing the seeds, both from top down and bottom up projects that are starting up. And that's really where Cadastre fits into this. We partner obviously with land agencies. Anna already mentioned the UN FALA, which is the framework for effective land administration, which was endorsed last year on August 8th as a UN framework. And so we now have this global framework for effective land administration, which directly links to the SDGs, and we've heard the SDGs mentioned a lot already this morning or today, and how they're really the focus point for the next decade ahead. And I am happy to announce, or it's already been announced, that this document is being translated into Arabic, so it will be available for use in the region. But that good news is sort of tempered by the fact that in the actual global consultation process that we're involved with, and was co-chaired by Guyana and the Netherlands, Arab state participation in and contribution to the FALA document was perhaps a bit behind other regions. You can see there was good contributions from many member states, but in the Arab region, the contributions were down, which probably shows a bit of poor engagement on the one hand from the UN process, but also it shows there is a gap in getting that input from the region. And so that should be seen really as an opportunity, and forums like we've got today are really a chance to keep building that momentum. So narrowing now down on the case of the Netherlands, the Netherlands' main land initiative, I guess if you'd call it that, or program, is Land at Scale program, which is backed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Commenced in 2019, is scheduled to run over 6 years, but there could be extensions around that at a price tag of 30 million EU. And that's not only for this region, but at the time of its instigation, it did have a specific focus, or there was the intention to have a specific emphasis on this MENA region, or the Arab region. And in that, Cadastre International is a sort of a participant in the strategic direction of the program, but also involved in specific projects. And that's where some of the work we were doing around 2019 and 2020, before the impact of COVID stalled things a little, was focused on Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and the Palestinian territories. So I just want to give a quick few slides on some of the findings of the initial works we took in those countries. There was that, and that tended to involve short missions, short fact-finding missions, but also interactions with our peers at the different agencies. So in Egypt, it was with the main agency that we've got quite a long collaboration with is ESA, that's the Egyptian Survey Authority. And they're primarily responsible for registering, for mapping lands, but in collaboration with the registry agency, getting titles and land administration systems up and running. But despite the rural area having a history of being mapped back some 100 years, the urban areas, and we saw today how large that area is, plus 20 million people, is largely unmapped, unrecorded, not within land administration system of any note. So we've got this total system of perhaps, less, greater than 90% of the country either not mapped or quite outdated in terms of the mapping. And you've got a system due to colonialism where you've got deeds and title systems running in parallel. Now, that was supposed to be remedied through the instigation of the 2015 new land registration law, but that's a process still playing out in terms of implementation. And so all that confluence results in 90% approximately of transactions being informally undertaken. And as we heard earlier, that results in lost resource revenue for government, but also just poor land governance outcomes. Where we do see a lot of emphasis in government at the moment has been large infrastructure projects, and that's actually seeing the conversion of formerly private lands into public lands. Other issues around inadequate women's rights, or at least representation of women in the registry, which I've already said is outdated. The laws there actually suggested, and there was a bit of debate around this, and the teams we did have in the room, that the laws are supportive of women's right, but then in practice or in reality, it's often men on the title, and women through inheritance are often, as we know in the region, encouraged or otherwise to cede those rights to men. Despite all that, there was a first wave of digitization efforts in the 2000s, but that's now aged, like all systems, and has some legacy elements to it. And also the paper-based system remains the legal point of truth. One thing we were happy with this project was the ability to get groups into the room that probably hadn't been interacting since the revolution period. And this was great to get all those different agencies in the room debating the issues and putting forward a roadmap for the future in terms of land administration transformation. And a key issue, I think, also is the need for capacity renewal in the country. It formerly had 11,000 staff, which is going to reduce down to around 2,500 staff in the space of about a decade, and had a recruitment freeze at least up until 2019, early 2020, of any employment of staff. So most of the staff are quite experienced, is a nice way to put it, in terms of years of service. And there's a long-standing issue then around citizen awareness raising and trust building. So one of the things that came out of the work too was the recognition that to improve that first key point of so little mapped, so little registered, is that a fit for purpose approach, both in urban and rural areas, could be a real key to expediting those many millions of parcels that don't have any recordation around them. And I'll move through this slide very quickly, but I'm sure it'll be made available. But this was the action plan that was developed by multiple agencies. The second case was some work undertaken in Lebanon, and you can start to see similar challenges emerging here. 35 to 50% of the country with no surveys or records. The country has about 3 million parcels. It's a much smaller scale, but obviously it still can be up to about 1.5 million parcels needing to be registered or mapped. Again, a 90s system was put in place, but it's got some obsolescence over it. And again, it's decentralized. It's not modern database technologies. It's not integrated, very much based, set up in a decentralized way. And then, as we heard in the previous session too, we've got these old, outdated laws, anachronistic laws from 1926, governing the process. That said, we noticed there was the large-scale World Bank project already with it happening in the country, and a French-Lebanese twinning project, which was focused around the legal and service modernization. I think those two projects together could be quite powerful outcomes for the country, and that's why Cadastre was looking at undertaking initiatives around supporting those, focused on awareness, capacity, education, and also the increasing use of standards, particularly because now we've got things like LADM at the international level, which enables you to go off the shelf to some degree with your data standards. Last one I was going to touch on is the Palestinian territories, which has a very unique and complex history, obviously, and that relates to it's no different for its land and tenure situations there. It's actually probably the smallest of the three we're mentioning here, but it's got the most agencies probably dealing with the issue of registration and tax. You can see those in the corner, the PLA. I've got my screen covering it a bit, GDPT and LWSC. Again, there's some issues around complexities of the government agencies. Registered versus non-registered lands is an issue, and then you've got these three classes of areas, and depending on where you're registered or non-registered, or whether you're in section A, B or C, you've got a different agency managing your land. Then you've got the issue of farmers being in one section of land and then their farms being in section C or area C. And obviously most of the land's in section C, that's agriculturally based, and 60% of the country is agriculture, but most of that's in area C, but most of the people are in the other areas. So this creates issues around registration, people being present for that process. Again, issues on costs, the same issues on women's access to land, particularly because they're so heavily involved in the farming. Then we've got the specific issue of Bedouin land rights, the same inheritance issue, encroachment and state land issues also, because the laws enable, if they're not registered, individuals to expropriate land. Again, a World Bank project going on in that space. But what we also noticed in that particular country was some really good bottom-up initiatives around social media outreach, LWSC using committees to get engagement with local communities. It was trying to expedite the registration on, but also an agency, which the Union of Agricultural Workers, providing these training services really linked to registration programs. So just to wrap up on my side, and sorry if I've gone a little bit long there, you can see the shared issues down that left-hand side, which if you unpack FALA, the Framework for Effective Land Administration, you can see the pretty much overlapping issues across all the 9 pathways you'll see in there. So governance issues, anachronistic laws, heavy on documentation, financial models, not always encouraging innovation, lack of standards and partnership barriers. But having said that, there's really good reasons for optimism in the region. We feel, based on those 3 case studies, goodwill amongst the land officials and those middle tier managers, an increasing urgency for renewal coming from the top down. This is also in Egypt was an example, but you could see it also in the other 2 countries, this emerging young talent. It wasn't always able to work directly within government, but was working in contract or as in other roles in the land sector. And young, skilled, technical talent was there and available. To finish up, next steps, we're really hoping the COVID situation, like all, scales back a bit so we can continue this work. We think there's great opportunities for the Land at Scale program run by the Netherlands government, and also FALA as a tool and an awareness raising facet to help with the achievement of the SDGs is another area we think can have great attention and help the region generally. So thanks, Anna, for the time.
Thank you very much, Rohan. Very interesting presentation, sort of giving an idea of what are the main issues in Egypt, Lebanon, and Palestine, but I'm quite sure, this applies also to other countries in the region. Let me move forward to the next presentation, which is by Jean-Maurice Durand. And Jean-Maurice is the Engineer General in Water and Forest by background. He is seconded by expertise friends to FAO, a senior land tenure expert. He's a portfolio manager of a group of projects implemented in Francophone Sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. So Jean-Maurice, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you. We can see your presentation.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, and you see the presentation. Do you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay, so I will speak in French, if you allow me, as the French is shared between Tunisia and Mauritania, the 2 countries I will talk about. Donc, ma présentation va vous exposer 2 exemples d'utilisation de ce qu'on appelle les directives volontaires pour une gouvernance foncière des régimes fonciers applicables aux terres, aux pêches et aux forêts dans le contexte de la sécurité alimentaire nationale. Ces directives volontaires ont été utilisées en Tunisie et en Mauritanie pour développer de nouvelles approches de gouvernance foncière. Je m'excuse, j'ai un écho qui me gêne beaucoup pour parler. Je vais... Yes, I'm having... Yes. Donc, tout d'abord, en Mauritanie, donc, à quoi a consisté le développement de cette nouvelle approche? Je présenterai très brièvement le contexte mauritanien, où la gouvernance foncière est une question très sensible et où jusqu'à présent, il y a eu assez peu de dialogue entre les autorités et les communautés rurales. Ce qui a pu poser des problèmes en matière de développement, de projets, etc., de mise en œuvre de projets. En 2016, le gouvernement a lancé un processus de réforme qui se veut transparent, inclusif. Et donc, en 2017, à travers un projet soutenu par la FAO en Mauritanie, on a mis en place une plateforme multi-acteurs impliquant donc à peu près tous les acteurs qui ont un rôle à jouer dans la gouvernance. On a mis en place donc cette plateforme qui a servi donc à établir un dialogue politique pour les orientations de la réforme foncière. Cette action a aussi été déclinée au niveau local avec la mise en place en 2018 d'une plateforme locale multi-acteurs à Bogué pour expérimenter de nouvelles approches de gouvernance foncière locale. Donc, ces résultats clés, les résultats clés qui ont été obtenus en Mauritanie par la mise en œuvre de ces approches participatives et inclusives qui font partie des principes de mise en œuvre des directives volontaires, ont contribué donc de manière cruciale à établir une feuille de route plus une stratégie pour l'amélioration du cadre juridique et administratif de la gouvernance foncière en Mauritanie. Ça a été une reconnaissance, je dirais, par le gouvernement du rôle positif qu'un mécanisme multi-acteur de cette nature peut et doit jouer dans la construction d'un consensus sur le contenu de la réforme et donc la mise au point de la feuille de route dont je parlais tout à l'heure. C'est un espace, donc ces plateformes multi-acteurs sont des espaces favorables au progrès donc en matière de reconnaissance des droits fonciers des plus vulnérables et d'un accès équitable et sécurisé aux ressources. Cela a aussi permis une reconnaissance accrue du rôle que jouent les femmes, les groupements de jeunes, etc., dans la sécurisation foncière. Parce que les groupes de femmes, les groupes de jeunes, etc., sont aussi membres de ces plateformes multi-acteurs qui ont été mises en place en Mauritanie. En Tunisie, le contexte est évidemment très différent. C'est la révolution, disons, de 2011 qui a créé des attentes fortes au sein de la société civile en matière donc de participation plus active aux décisions. Les agriculteurs, les sociétés civiles d'une manière générale souhaitent être associés davantage aux décisions qui les concernent en matière de projets de développement agricole et d'aménagement foncier. Et donc, l'Agence du foncier agricole en Tunisie a demandé à la FAO un appui pour utiliser les directives volontaires et changer en quelque sorte les méthodes de travail, les approches donc en matière d'aménagement foncier et d'administration foncière. Et donc, entre la FAO et l'AFA, il y a eu une collaboration d'abord pour identifier des besoins en renforcement des capacités des différents acteurs, et notamment des agents donc, de l'Agence foncière agricole. Et sur cette base, on a bâti ensemble un programme de formation qui s'est voulu très interactif pour avoir donc des approches un peu plus participatives, un peu plus inclusives par rapport à ce qui se faisait avant, qui était, disons, un petit peu plus top-down. Et donc, ces approches participatives ont été développées de manière inclusive dans des ateliers régionaux qui se sont tenus au nord, au centre et au sud du pays, qui ont permis des échanges de bonnes pratiques entre acteurs très divers. On a aussi invité, par exemple, les juges, tous les gens qui pouvaient intervenir aussi en prévention des conflits fonciers de manière à bâtir ensemble des approches plus adaptées, disons, et moins dictées par l'aspect technique. Cette série de formations a aussi été complétée par des échanges de bonnes pratiques avec un certain nombre de pays en matière d'approche inclusive. Je cite le Maroc, la Bosnie-Herzégovine et la Turquie, donc où un certain nombre de cadres de l'Agence du foncier agricole se sont rendus pour échanger et élaborer ensemble de bonnes pratiques. Donc, quels sont les principaux résultats de cette approche en Mauritanie? Il y a une approche plus donc, participative et inclusive des bénéficiaires, avec un modèle multi-acteurs pour discuter les défis et les challenges en matière de foncier et trouver ensemble des solutions qui soient construites et qui soient bien adaptées maintenant à la demande sociale qui, encore une fois, a évolué. Cela permet aussi de tester des outils pour les projets de remembrement agricole, des outils qui soient un peu plus participatifs, un peu plus inclusifs dans leur approche. La prévention des conflits, comme je l'ai dit, a été aussi abordée avec l'association des juges aux réflexions sur les nouvelles approches qui ont été mises au point. En fait, les approches donc, qui ont été développées aussi en liaison avec les bénéficiaires et les techniciens de la FA seront mises en pratique dans des projets qui ont été identifiés, qui ont été aussi associés à la réflexion pendant ces sessions de formation. J'ai cité donc entre l'AFD et le FIDA des projets donc, financés par l'AFD et le FIDA qui permettront de mettre en pratique ce qui a été appris pendant les sessions de formation interactive qui ont été conduites à travers le projet d'appui de la FAO. Donc, c'est aussi une garantie de durabilité un petit peu des résultats qui ont été obtenus à la suite de ces formations. L'application directe aussi des directives volontaires en Tunisie et en Mauritanie a permis de développer des outils contextualisés. Je citerai ceux que je vous montre sur cette diapositive, qui sont en fait des guides très pratiques, des guides de terrain pour mettre en œuvre ce qu'on appelle le principe du consentement préalable, libre et éclairé. C'est un principe qui permet donc aux communautés rurales de donner un avis éclairé, libre et en connaissance de cause, donc sur les projets qui les concernent et donc en particulier les projets de développement agricole et de développement foncier, d'aménagement foncier. Ces deux documents sont fondés non seulement sur les directives volontaires, mais sur un guide technique sur le consentement préalable libre et éclairé qui a été développé par l'AFAO. Donc, ces deux documents sont très, très bien adaptés aux besoins puisqu'ils ont été conçus par les acteurs eux-mêmes. Voilà, pour conclure, donc, quels sont un petit peu les résultats qui ont été obtenus dans les deux pays, donc en allant vers une vision un peu harmonisée autour de quelques thèmes principaux que je cite maintenant. Une avancée progressive, donc, pour passer d'une approche un peu top-down à une approche plus concertée avec les bénéficiaires. Si possible, même aller vers de la codécision en matière de projets d'aménagement. L'idée étant d'aller, comme je l'ai dit, d'une approche assez top-down à l'origine vers une approche beaucoup plus participative, avec plus d'implication des communautés rurales dans les processus de décision liés aux questions foncières. Il s'agit aussi d'assurer qu'il y ait plus de transparence en matière de gouvernance foncière et un accroissement, disons, de la confiance entre les autorités et les agriculteurs. Ça aussi, c'est une question très importante. Souvent, en Mauritanie ou en Tunisie, il peut y avoir une prise de confiance, disons, entre les bénéficiaires de projets et les autorités. Et donc, cette approche participative permet donc de juguler cette méfiance et de construire en quelque sorte la confiance. Et enfin, donc, ça a permis aussi de renforcer les mécanismes communautaires, comme on a dit, de résolution des conflits. La plateforme de Bogué en Mauritanie, par exemple, citée au début, a permis de résoudre des conflits fonciers locaux par l'organisation du dialogue avec toutes les parties prenantes.
2 more minutes.
Enfin, donc, il reste quand même des challenges après ces projets qui ont appuyé ces approches plus participatives. Les développer, disons, ces approches participatives, ça reste un défi, le foncier restant une question sensible. Le dialogue est quelque chose qu'il faut entretenir, qu'il faut continuer à soutenir, sinon ça peut retomber. Et pour ça, une des solutions envisagées, une des solutions qu'on propose à travers la suite de ces projets, en conclusion de ces projets, c'est de former, de cibler, de motiver ce qu'on appelle des agents de changement, c'est-à-dire des gens qui sont très impliqués dans les processus fonciers et qui sont motivés, qui ont la motivation et la capacité aussi de changer les choses. Ça peut être des administrateurs, ça peut être des autorités locales, ça peut être des juges, etc. L'idée est de les cibler, de les former, etc., pour qu'ils deviennent à leur tour des agents de changement et promeuvent sur le long terme le changement, même au-delà de la fin des projets. Voilà. Donc, ces deux exemples visaient à vous montrer que les directives volontaires, qui restent un document très large, un consensus mondial, disons, sur les bonnes pratiques en matière de foncier, ces directives volontaires peuvent être contextualisées, peuvent être adaptées, elles sont souples, elles sont volontaires, et donc elles peuvent être facilement contextualisées, adaptées au contexte et aux problématiques locales. L'exemple de la Tunisie et de la Mauritanie, qui sont des contextes très différents, montre que l'on peut utiliser ces directives volontaires pour développer des outils très adaptés, très contextualisés. Voilà, je vous remercie et je m'excuse pour quelques problèmes d'écho que j'avais et j'entendais répéter les voix plusieurs fois.
Thank you very much, Jean-Maurice. I think at least on my side, presentation was very clear. The audio was very clear. So thank you for bringing up the issue of exactly participative processes and mechanisms and the importance of this, for the sustainability and the success of many of the interventions on land issues. Let me move on to the next presenter is Dave Stowe. He's currently senior architect at Ordnance Survey, where he's helping the business implement its strategy of delivering managed digital services. He has experience spanning over 30 years and ranging across utilities, finance, technology startup, not-for-profit, and public sector, and has lived and operated internationally. In his current role, Dave has a special interest in how land administration can be improved as part of enabling macroeconomic growth. He's spoken at a number of conferences on this topic, including a keynote at the Middle East Africa ESRI User Conference and at the World Bank. So, Dave, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I just want to check that. And that you can all hear me okay. As Anna said, I am Dave Stowe. I'm Senior Architect at Ordnance Survey, which is the national mapping service for Great Britain. And I want to talk today about how the implementation of the technology that enables a jurisdiction to carry out the process of administering land effectively, how that technology needs to support the world that we are in at the moment, which is a world of fast changing needs and expectations of people in the way they interact with their land authority, and to in particular discuss the management of the data that actually forms the register and how that data needs to be managed in the future. There are many things that drive the need for the land authority within any jurisdiction to be able to support change, the demands on the land authority from their governments to create new and better land markets, to enable greater inclusivity for the peoples of a country, the mega trends of the world, urbanization, globalization of the market, mega issues like climate change, and of course the current coronavirus pandemic, drive users to want to be able to interact with their land authority more effectively, more transparently. Users are more digitally savvy, and of course they are subject to the arrival of new and innovative technologies on an almost daily basis. And traditionally, the approach that's been taken to the implementation of IT systems by land authorities has not been an approach that is supportive and enabling of creation of this kind of changing world, but in fact has been one that is quite the opposite, quite constraining of change. The problems we have seen within Ordnance Survey, as we have discussed this issue with a number of land authorities around the world, including in the Arab region, is that traditionally the approach to IT system implementation and the move away from paper-based administering of land towards a digital mechanism for administering land is that these projects are typically long-term carry a very high risk of failure. Indeed, we've seen a number of these projects that have not been successful and have not worked and have not led to the digital administration of land that was hoped for. And they typically are very big bang in their approach. There is a long implementation cycle followed by a large go live situation, and this implementation cycle includes the transformation of the data that made up the register in the old system, whether that was a manual system where the data was on paper, or whether it was an old computer system dating from the 90s or the early 2000s, the transformation of that data to the new form. And our observation is that the land authority is typically moved from the fixed state they were in before to a new fixed state, and that fixed state will persist until another large, high-risk, high-cost, long implementation cycle project is delivered that moves the land authority to a new fixed state. And this approach is not supportive of the rapid need to be able to support the change asked for in the world and to deliver new and innovative services to the people who wish to use the services of the land authority. Indeed, we see in many of these implementations that by the point of go live, the system is obsolete almost on the day it is turned on, and then remains in that fixed state until there is change. So I want to deal with one of the issues in this, which is the data transformation problem. And my aspiration, my desire here for dealing with this is that it appears that an analysis of data would suggest that, in fact, mass transformation of the data that forms the register from the old system to the new system is not only high effort and comes with extreme cost, it's also not worth doing. And my reason for saying that is because an analysis of data from England and Wales, from Her Majesty's Land Registry here in Britain, suggests that if you were to study the number of titles actually transacted on during the lifetime of an IT system, then in fact over a 5 to 10 year period, which is the typical lifespan of an even quite fast changing IT system, less than half of the data in the register would have been touched. Typically the data that is transacted on are small properties, starter homes in urban areas. Those are transacted on quite regularly, but many properties are not transacted for perhaps generations, and in fact even over a 20-year period. You will see from our study that nearly a third of properties over a 20-year period were not transacted upon in this England and Wales study. The other side of this is of course that what is required is the ability not just to move to the data model that supports the services that you wish to deliver today, but to be able to move to a data model that will deliver services that you will wish to deliver tomorrow and the day after, and in 5 years' time when something new that we have not even considered has appeared. And as such, my thesis here is that mass transformation of the data is not only undesirable because it constrains your ability to deliver change. If every time you wish to deliver new services, you have to move your register from one data model to another, it should not be necessary. It should be possible for the technology that you select for your land administration system to cope with the fact you are going to have multiple versions of your data model existing, coexisting with each other within the same system, to allow you to move on a title by title basis from one model to another. And something else that drives this is that, you know, if you are planning to, if your expectation is you will change your land administration system once every 10 to 15 years, much of the data in it that you will have transformed from old system to new system, and then perhaps transformed again as you move to create new services within your new systems, much of that data won't even have been touched and won't ever transact. And the effort is wasted. What I want to see is that it's possible to release business value early in the process of adoption of a piece of technology by having a system that allows you to do the minimum possible transformation of your data from its current form to the new form required by the new system, perhaps scanning paper records and capturing some minimal data within that, and then enable you to move on a title by title basis to a more codified format, perhaps adopting the LADM standard for how the data is structured. And this would enable some new automation to be done and enable some new services to be done, but do it on a title by title basis as needed. And then within the same piece of technology, be able to then support new data models that will appear as we move towards a time where we see greater use of three-dimensional cadastre and driving the cadastre based on BIM models of buildings, which I'm sure we will see particularly in urban areas over the next few years, and create within your piece of technology essentially a sliding window of data schemas that where data in old, new, and newer formats can coexist within the piece of technology, and allowing you to move on a title by title basis to new forms of data model as is needed in order to support services, and without having to do that mass transformation that is unnecessary when looking to support the change in the services you're going to want to deliver as a land authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. You indeed bring in a very interesting perspective on, you know, how to use technology most efficiently to support land information system and the, you know, administration and management of land, which is something that indeed is one of the most complex and costly, right? Operations, interventions at work, you know, that we also face in our work. So thank you for bringing that in. It's very, very interesting. Let me move on to the next speaker. Is Professor Moha El Ayachi. So he's a doctor and licensed engineer of land surveying and geodetic sciences. He's the coordinator of the Network of Excellence of Land Governance in North Africa. He's the editor-in-chief of the African Journal on Land Policy and Geospatial Sciences and director of publication of the NELGA newsletter in North Africa. He's a professor at the Institute of Agronomy and Veterinary Medicine, the head of the master program on geospatial sciences and land governance. His domain of expertise ranges from geodetic sciences, land governance and land information management, and geospatial technology. So the floor is yours, Professor El Ayachi.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm sorry, I didn't hear anything from Anna. So let me start. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for allowing us to contribute in this interesting meeting and event to present some of the findings and some of the successful experiences and practices and share them with our community in the Arab world. The theme I will present today is linked to the African Journal on Land Policy and the Geospatial Sciences as a best practice of the NILGA in North Africa, the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa, and this is the hub of North Africa. The journal is a contribution in the African continent since September 2018 to stimulate the writing of the scientists and researchers in the continent, and also share their experiences with the worldwide, and also to share knowledge and research funding through publishing them in a specific journal that should be established for Africa and foster more research and development at the African level. So the objectives behind establishing the journal since the setting up of the hubs of the NILGA, the NILGA network, is to advance the research agenda related to land policy and also to the geospatial sciences in the continent. This will enable us to
you're on mute. Please unmute yourself so we can hear you. Hello? Please unmute yourself.
Okay. You hear me? No?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Is it fine now?
Yes, it is. Yes.
I don't hear anything. Can you hear me, Anna?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, it's good. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. So let's the platform, the journal, the African Journal Land Policy and Geospatial Sciences, was managed by a team composed of the editor-in-chief and an assistant staff, and also the editorial board and scientific committee. And what are the reasons and what are the main tools that helps the journal to continue its activities from 2018 till now, is that we are encouraged by the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research in Morocco. They provide us with a platform to host our journal and provide us also with the anti-plagiarism platform in order to assess and evaluate all submitted papers to the journal. The staff of the journal, was the editorial staff is the editor-in-chief, and two staff members, in order to ensure the following tasks: is to ensure the copy editing, submission, manage reviewers, and also take care of the format of the final editing of the papers. And the editorial board is about 15 members from the NILGA hub coordinators, also the African experts in land policy and geospatial sciences, and also professors from universities. And till now, we don't have any member from outside Africa. We still work with the experts from the continent. are also for associate editors who are responsible for 4 sections inside the journal, and their tasks is to manage the journal and also manage the reviewing tasks and the processing and disseminate the results and the findings that are published by the papers sent to the journal. And we have also parallelly the partners who support the journal, which is GIZ, the African Land Policy Center, and also the Network of Excellence on Land Governance in Africa, and the Institute of Agronomy and Veterinary Science as the host of the journal. What are the sections that are considered inside the journal? We found the first section is the Land Policy and Regulatory Framework section in order to open the door for young researchers and also professors to publish their findings and the result of their research in this section, and also deal with the current issues related to the youth, gender, and security of tenure section. And also, we open also the second door for, the third door for youngs to publish their activities, research activities, and scientists in geospatial sciences in the journal. We added another important section, which is the African land culture and behavior related to land policy and land governance in Africa. This section is a very specific section within the journal that collects only some of the behavioral consideration related to land in Africa. It could be a scientific research, could be some of the insights that we collect from the floor, from the field, or some of the ideas related to the customer thoughts related to land in Africa. The scientific committee is very diverse because we have a lot of members that contribute to enhance the level of published papers in the journal. We found from outside Africa and from also Africa. 6% from United Kingdom, 5% from Germany, and all other members from the scientific committee are from Africa. What are the types of the manuscripts we publish in this journal as for the last new vision and strategy of the journal? We publish articles that are result of the scientific activities and research studies done by young researchers and professors from Africa, and also the review papers. This is to open the door for elaborating some reviews for the existing research results, and also developing a literature review and present them to be published in this journal. We added one important kind of manuscripts, which is related to the columns. This kind of publication is related to the short writing that concern original topics addressing social and behavioral aspects of land in Africa. This kind of publication will interest many specialists that will likely stimulate further ideas linked to land, especially the customary land and informal appropriation of land in Africa. Some of the features related to the development of this journal since its establishment in 2018, we have a lot of features from the downloadings and downloads of papers developed, published by the journal. And you see in some periods of the year, we found a lot of publication, and also from the first year to the second year, we remark that we have a lot of entries that is according to our region throughout the world. Some of the downloads at the international level, we can see that is from Africa is about 70%, and from Europe 13%, from Asia 12%, from America 4%, and from Australia 0.2%. The main readers and the main downloaders of the papers published in the journal are from Africa, and in Africa the potential readers are from Morocco, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Senegal, and Zambia. Here in this slide, I share with you the amount of downloads that are above 50 papers are downloads. We found in Africa about 70% of papers are downloaded more than 50 times. And from India, 12%, from Europe, 11%, and from the United States, as 5%. So when we started the journal as a reference platform from African scientists and also from researchers in the continent, we think beyond this limitation of the continent, and we would like to be indexed as a reference, a scientific journal. Why? In order to be recognized as an authentic journal in terms of originality of its papers and the manuscripts that are published in the journal, and also provide worldwide credibility for the journal, and also reflect the high scientific quality of the content that are published by the journal, and to recognize also the findings of the academia that publish their works in this platform. The objective also behind indexing the journal is to increase the visibility of the journal to a global research community and to share knowledge with them, and also attract credible authors, because when it is indexed, it will have a good reputation. That's why we need to share it with the scientists worldwide. And to get an important scientific impact factor or site score if we are indexed as Scopus or Web of Science. Some of the indexing services we got just during this the 2 years is we are indexed by the Institute of Information Management and Technical Information from our Ministry of Higher Education and Research Science and Scientific Research in Morocco. We are also indexed as a DOAG, Director of Open Access Journals, and by the Research in Agriculture and Applied Economics in Minnesota, and also by the European Reference Index for the Human the Human and Social Sciences, and also by the NIAR from the University of Barcelona. The ongoing indexing processes are now related to the Web of Science and Scopus. We got the first assessment from Scopus, and we hope that next December we will apply to meet the requirements that are indicated by Scopus as some of the potential elements to enable us being a kind of platform indexed by Scopus and also by Web of Science. According to the achievement we got during the 2 years, we during last summer we established a new roadmap for the journal that concerned the enhancement of the products that are published by the journal in order to meet the expectation of our scientists and also meet the high level of the institutions that are involved in the journal, and also build a strong scientific communication network and ensure a high level of knowledge sharing and dissemination in the world. So the journal has developed an idea to set up an African land policy publisher in order to build a website for publishing many of the journals that are edited or are developed in Africa, and also the African journals that deals with land policy or land governance, and also magazines, and publish books and serial books that are developed in Africa. Now, those are some of the kind strategy that we are starting in, and the website of the publisher is ready, and it could be start next March. The new strategy also proposed that we will keep a volume a year and publish 5 high-level regular issues instead of 3 regular issues in a year. We expect to publish 20 articles per issue and 10 review articles per issue, and also 8 columns during 1 year. That means during a month. So those are some of the the achievement that I would like to share with our community regarding the establishment of the African Journal on Land Policy and Geospatial Sciences. And thank you very much for your
Thank you very much, Professor Moa. I think it's really great to see that this initiative is really moving forward and getting traction. I think we cannot stress enough the importance of research for the Middle East and North Africa region. You know, we've also seen that you know, a lot needs to be done. So we're also working on a study now currently at the World Bank on land issues in the MENA region, and we see that you know, there's not much data, there's not much information, not much research done, you know, for the region. So we really welcome this initiative of yours. We have a few minutes left. Let me open the floor in Cairo and see if there are any questions for any of our panelists from the floor.
في أي أسئلة يا جماعة لو سمحتوا؟ No, I don't think there is question, Anna.
Okay, no questions from the floor. Let me see if in the chat we have some questions. The only one I see, maybe two. So one I think is for Professor Moha. Is it possible to publish scientific articles related to land in your Jordan from Uzbekistan, from other countries, so outside of the region? And then I think there was another question in terms of what are some of the experience, some of the programs that have been done in some of the countries that have been presented today in terms of protecting agricultural lands to ensure food security. Who would like to take that question?
Okay, let me start with the question related to the publication of the scientific papers made outside Africa. According to our new vision that we established just last summer, we consider that this journal was dedicated in order to encourage sharing knowledge and research results with the scientists throughout the world. And we also agree on the fact that we need to ask also to receive contributions from other countries other than Africa, because this will enrich our experience and also share or facilitate sharing knowledge with our scientists and research in the continent. So any paper from any country or from any point from the world could be published if it respects all the guidelines and the scientific requirements that are established by the journal.
Thank you very much. Who would like to take on the questions on agricultural lands protection and food security? Please, Jean-Maurice.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Maybe I can say a few words also. As I have said, the voluntary guidelines are the voluntary guidelines for responsible governance of tenure, etc., in the context of national food security. So I think the voluntary guidelines are aiming to improve actually food security and to protect the agricultural sector. By doing what, actually? One of the main principles of these guidelines is to ensure that the rights actually of the farmers are recognized, the legitimate tenure rights are recognized. So I think this is a fundamental issue, a fundamental principle that is, let's say, fostered in the voluntary guidelines. And I think this is a fundamental key to ensure that actually the farmers stay on their land in a very secure way, actually. So I think the recognition and protection of tenure rights is one of the first conditions, actually, for food security. This is an important message to convey, I think.
Thanks, Jean-Maurice. Any of the other panelists that would like to respond to the same question? Please, Rohan.
Thanks, Anna. I did put some responses in the text a little bit earlier, but I tend to agree with Jean-Maurice in his response there that the VGs and by extension the SDGs do provide this basis, to provide the impetus to make use of land tenure security for the provision of food security by extension. In the cases that I was mentioning, so that was Lebanon, Egypt, and the Palestinian territories, there was, I think they provide a good example, at least at the institutional or bureaucratic level, of this often close but sometimes siloed relationship between your land administration agencies on the one hand, and when I say land administration, I'm referring specifically there to more land registry or cadastral agencies and ministries of agriculture, and we see all different kinds of setups where the ministries may be quite siloed, but sometimes one's a subset of the other or vice versa. And I think that relationship is increasingly important in the era of digital data, where we have the opportunity through standards and shared data to use a single map base and to use a single cadastral layer, rather than collecting the same kinds of parcel data or land use data versus land tenure data and keeping them quite separate, which has been the trend in the past. So I think this close relationship between Ministry of Agriculture on the one hand, or whatever iteration that is, plus your urban planning agencies and your other land tenure agencies is really crucial in this. But above all that, you've got to have obviously the vision and the clarity on, are you a net food importer or net food exporter, and exactly what the food equation is within the particular jurisdiction. The other issue is obviously that creates a lot of tension and pressure is the value of agricultural land or rural land versus the value of urban land, and that's why in those peri-urban areas we often see great, and Nile Delta is a great example, really good fertile, some of the most fertile soil in the world being taken up with urban structures. And from a food security perspective, it often looks odd, but then when you consider it from a land value perspective, well, it makes more sense. So just a few comments there.
Thank you very much, Rohan. I believe we have reached the end of the session. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I believe that also the room in Cairo is getting ready for another event there. So let me thank all of the panelists for today. Very, very interesting presentations. They will be posted on the conference website, so it will be available for everybody to see. And of course, if they have any follow-up questions, they can follow up directly with the presenters. So thank you very much again to everybody, and actually take the opportunity to remind again that tomorrow we have the second session of the same technical session on land administration and management. And I'd like to also invite you all to the consultation roundtable that we will have tomorrow afternoon, Cairo time. We will be presenting some of the summary findings on the World Bank report on